Go, we on? Oh, he's ready to go. Right, ladies and gents, gentlemen, ladies and gents. Welcome to Speaker's Corner and our latest installation. The subject of the week, obviously, is the digis. I got a little piece of paper here from the government. Digital ID Speed Explainer. In case you didn't know, explainer. Because when you get government decisions, you've got to have a proper look at it. So, not that I have.
So you accepted that digital ID is a thing then?
It's not going to happen.
Well, you were saying it doesn't make any. It's already here, and it doesn't make any difference.
I mean, here we are. I think Keir Starmer is working together with Piers Corbyn.
He's going.
He's working together with Piers Corbyn, and he's plotting to use Piers Corbyn to oust Jeremy Corbyn as the leader of your party. And the other person who's working with Jeremy Corbyn, so with Piers Corbyn, is Zara Sultana, who's trying to mess up the new party.
Wrecking it, yeah.
So that it's hundreds of thousands of people who sign up to a new party to oppose all the old system. And they knew they couldn't present Piers Corbyn as an alternative straight away. So first they rolled out Jeremy, and you're going to go, well, I think he didn't even want a party. Piers has been desperate for my party. Remember, Piers' first political intervention in the anti-lockdown movement was to create something called Our Movement. Right? It wasn't Stop New Normal. It wasn't like World Economic Forum. It was Our Movement. So from Our Movement to your party is not very far. And so I can only conclude that there are two people, both of whom are conspiracy theorists, who are behind what's happening today, trying to undermine and destroy our great leader, Keir Starmer. The other person, both of whom I'll explain about their conspiracy theory. The other person is none other than Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson. Don't forget. I once went outside. I know how close Boris Johnson and Piers Corbyn are. I've known Piers Corbyn a long time, and I once went to Downing Street to protest against Boris Johnson.
Why are you denouncing?
And I said to Piers Corbyn, I'm sure he's coming. I'm sure he's on his way. I'm sure they're both on their way.
He's in Liverpool.
He's in Merseyside.
He says he's in Liverpool.
But he's actually omnipresent.
Any case, he can respond to this afterwards.
I'm sure he will.
Now, if you wanted, I mean, you can't make it up. That's the reason why.
You just did.
Look at that, I'm turning to Donald Trump. That's the reason why. All right, yeah. We got Don supporters here.
She likes her, Donald.
We got Don supporters here.
Donald Duck.
Who stands to gain the most from Keir Starmer falling, hoisting himself on his petard of digital ID with the most lame excuse? I mean, Piers Corbyn couldn't make. I mean, he did immediately say when these protests that Adam here was at. The Epping protests, he said.
I went to one or two.
He said these protests. He said the migrant hotels are deliberately being used to bring in digital ID.
Yes.
And I thought to myself,
right. It's very good.
I thought to myself, that's the flat earther coming out. And then the next day,
it's because you're not looking
the
down
British
the rabbit hole yet.
Well, no, I am looking. I'm one step further.
No, you're not.
I'm one step further,
not,
as I'm explaining to you now. Keir Starmer's digital ID. I mean, you couldn't unite the opposition to the government in any more successful way than to call for digital ID based on migrants coming on boats. I mean, and when on television, I watched the television a couple of times this week, and they had Labour politicians, and they asked them, why are you saying we should have digital ID? And they said to control illegal working.
Yeah, but they don't know.
And 1 minute, and then they said, but what do you mean control illegal working? And then he said, the French have told us, the French have told us that the pull factor is that you can work in Britain because you don't have digital ID.
Rubbish.
That's what they said. That's what the Labour politicians said. Now I can only conclude either the secret hand of Piers Corbyn is pulling the strings and has been pulling the strings all along, or, and these are not mutually exclusive, or Boris Johnson is pulling the strings alongside. Now I'm not sure who's the puppet master here. Is it Boris or is it Piers Corbyn? I'm not certain. Piers will be able to, because I mean, and look, if Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, and I tried to join their party this week. They launched a website. I signed up, and then it said declare your event. So I put my Karl Marx walking tour on there, and then it said permission pending for the listings for my walking tour. And then I paid my money, and then it came through on my account, money paid.
How much is it?
And then I saw Jeremy. $5, I think. It's quite cheap if you're poor like me. And they put up Jeremy. I saw he had his mobile phone out and he had his membership email. He said, "I've just joined." And then I looked on my email. I didn't get any email. And then I thought, "Oh my God, they're not going to let me in." And then a couple of days later, I saw they let me in the membership area, and then I paid again. So 2 times I paid. Twice they deducted money, still I got no membership card. So I'm a little bit wondering about it. And then I found out there isn't actually a membership. Even though I want to be a member, and I went to the meetings, and I've been active with Jeremy and the rest of them for decades, I still have, there isn't a party to join. And so the problem is, you can't ask people to join a party if there isn't actually a party to join.
How is this
connected into this? Because if Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana want to get hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, like Tommy did only a few weeks ago, all they would have to do would use the words, "I will never carry a digital ID, I will go to prison in refusing to carry a digital ID, and I will join my brother, Piers Corbyn, if necessary in doing that." Who says that instead? Boris Johnson. Now, why does Boris Johnson say that?
Boris said that.
Boris wrote an article in the Daily Mail saying, I will never carry a digital ID.
When?
In the Daily Mail yesterday.
Really?
Yesterday.
Wow.
In the Daily Mail yesterday.
Wow.
Now, ask yourself this.
It's just an opportunity.
If there is anybody,
but
remember this.
Pretty good.
When Boris Johnson resigned after the enormous pressure put on him, he said in Parliament, "Hasta la vista, baby. Hasta la vista, baby. I'll be back." That's what he said. Now, the Conservative Party is in a desperate internal crisis, primarily driven by the Brexiteer Nigel Farage, who previously won huge swathes of the population. For example, before 2016, he had something like 30 or 40% opinion polls behind him at various times. Correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the internet. And then he won European elections, he did extremely well. But then when it came to the actual election, people voted Tory because it appeared more likely they'd be elected. And then Boris Johnson, under pressure from Nigel Farage, shifted over towards opposition to the European Union, even though he was in favour of the European Union. He was a supporter of the European Union. He shifted against the European Union, when pressure came from the Brexit campaigners, famous three actually, Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage, and Piers Corbyn. And by the way, George Galloway. So now there, as I was one little point I was. What was that? George Galloway got arrested at the airport just now. Well, he didn't get arrested actually. He got detained temporarily at the border by the terrorism police, because everyone's a terrorist now who doesn't believe the news headlines that are in the newspapers today, that we have to prepare for war in the near future against Russia. That's the lunacy that the ruling class of Britain are trying to drag you towards.
With whose army?
Well, with these kids, they're going to go to war. Where are you from? You're not British, are you British? You'll go to war as well. Your lot are just as bad, isn't it? Rutger, isn't he one of yours? No, he's not one of yours. But anyway, you've got the same cretins in power over there, advocating for war against Russia. Oh my God, the Russians are coming. They flew a drone over Estonia. Off we go to war, or get a digital ID. Now, this story about Piers Corbyn and Boris Johnson. Well, Boris Johnson, if they want to undermine Farage, and for sure they do, and if they want to undermine Tommy Robinson, and I remember the last election, people went up to Tommy Robinson and they said, "Who are you voting for?" He said, "Boris Johnson, of course." Boris Johnson, Tommy Robinson. He said, "Who are you voting for?" He said, "Tommy Robinson." Tommy Robinson voted. Tommy. He voted for Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson stole the English flag from Nigel Farage and the Brexiteers. And therefore, the idea from Keir Starmer, now I admit it's perfectly possible that Keir Starmer is so utterly and completely stupid, and his AI utilization is so self-reinforcing. And I tried it. I went on AI this week and I did searches. I said, imagine you're Keir Starmer and his team, and you've been working on the existing programs, and then you're confronted by the boats and migrants issue. How would you justify this idea of calling for digital ID? And it was the belief that the opinion polls, they're saying that the Tories want digital ID, Nigel Farage supporters want digital ID, Tommy supporters want control of our borders and therefore digital ID. So digital ID is a really good idea, and it's free, and we can sell it to the public as digital ID. It's free. Digital ID is the one for me. Digital ID, yippee, digital ID. Literally, you cannot think up a more idiotic, from his own standpoint, a more idiotic pathway to pursue. Now, what that's done, however.
They did that with the jabs, didn't they?
Well, that wasn't Keir Starmer.
I'm
sure Keir Starmer would. That's true. Not only are they free in Austria, for example, with the COVID, you didn't get a donut. You got a donut in England.
America.
In Austria, they gave you a free session in the brothel. They gave you a free session in the brothel if you got a COVID injection, right? So COVID injection, bunk up in the brothel. And then in Austria, they had two tacks. Said either you can go to the brothel and get a COVID injection, or you can go to prison for 1 year if you don't get a COVID injection. That was the argument given in Austria as to what they should do. And then they dropped it in favour of going to war with Ukraine. They said, oh no, we've got a desperate crisis now in Ukraine, because eastern Ukraine has been seized by the Russians, and the Russians are monsters who want to march into Western Europe, conquer Western Europe, get all of you speaking Yaponi Mayu Paruski Yazik and stuff like that in school. And then, and then you'll be cheering on the Russians. Look at that guy over there. He's already doing it. England flag, Russian flag, we march together. That's the same. That's what they're trying to say. It's coming your way any day soon, unless you get a digital ID. And the digital ID, I was checking as well about the Chinese, because one of the arguments given in Britain about the fear of digital ID is to say, look, digital ID is coming, and it's going to be just like China. Everywhere you go, you're going to have digital ID watching over you. In actual fact, the Chinese have had ID, like the European ID, for a best part of 2 decades. Yeah? And the incremental increase in controls in surveillance have now been being reined back. So, for example, now in China, there are new laws have been introduced to restrict facial recognition. I met a young guy last week who's Chinese from Beijing, and he was telling me some of his friends went on the anti-lockdown demonstrations. And when they went on the anti-lockdown demonstrations in December 2022, some of them were called in by the police for an interview. In China they say, go for a cup of tea. So the police come and have a cup of tea with you, and then they say, don't do this again. But they knew who they were because of their mobile phone. Their mobile phone had been tracked to where they were. Because another friend of his didn't have his mobile phone and they didn't get him. They didn't detect him. So it's all about the mobile phone, which comes on to the point I was making earlier on. The primary mechanism for surveillance and control of the world's population is the mobile phone. That's the primary mechanism for control and surveillance. And they can hack your phone, they can access your phone, they can listen to what you're saying, they can record what they don't reveal that to the general public. That's only been revealed by the events, for example, connecting with Edward Snowden and with Palantir, the way Palantir treat people in Palestine. They detect what they say on Facebook, stuff like that, put them in prison, drop bombs on them, depending upon what geolocation they find them out on the internet. So that's the more extreme form. But to accept that more extreme form, they want you in Britain to take everyone in order to get it. Well, I mean, you can't make it up. These people are coming. They're called undocumented migrants, right? The ones they're complaining about. Undocumented migrants. So they come on a boat, and if they got a passport, they chuck the boat overboard. They arrive in England, and they're not known who they are. Then they turn around, then they say, oh, we need digital ID. Well, what's the benefit of having digital ID for someone who don't know who they are? What possible difference will that make to anything? And how are you going to? And then they go, oh yeah, but they might get a job with an Uber delivery company, right? Okay, people might complain they're getting benefits and getting a job with an Uber delivery company, but then you can go and get an Uber delivery thing, get the money coming in, you go and do it in your face, and then I go and make the delivery. Unless you want every time I go and collect some food from McDonald's to deliver to Ladbroke Grove. Unless every time I go to McDonald's, I have to show a digital ID, and they have to be able to verify it with some central authority of the police with biometric scanning, then nobody's going to know whether I'm Martin or Heiko anyway. So it's utter and complete nonsense, drivel, nonsense. And yet, yes, it is a generalised introduction, a preparation. So the population will be ready for generalised introduction of digital surveillance. I don't think it will happen. But you see, this is the double point. So one side is, Boris Johnson and Piers Corbyn are about to have their day. I think Boris Johnson will be elevated. They talked about Andy Burnham standing, and that was in the same discussion. There were TV shows, news broadcasts last week, where digital ID and the government and Andy Burnham threatening to stand were welded together into one story. So that's one aspect to it. Second aspect is everybody knows Nigel Farage is the main threat to the Conservative Party and also to the Labour Party. So if they can undermine Nigel Farage, the best way to do that is to recreate the Boris Johnson, the spectre of Johnson, the man who carried out Brexit. Not the hot air man, but the man with the party, with the establishment and the money as well. So that's why I'm saying I think Boris Johnson is being elevated. Of course, all the Zionists are behind him as well. So there's no problem in getting resources, media coverage and support. And I do think Keir Starmer's days are numbered. And I think the digital ID will be the spike on which he falls. And he's been set up for it.
Yes,
I'm sure he's been set up for it. He didn't want to lose his job, but he's going to lose his job because of digital ID.
Well, he's going to do what he's...
I'm pretty certain he's going to be defeated on this. I'm pretty certain. Because everyone from Tommy to Jeremy Corbyn is saying they're opposed to it. The problem is, Jeremy Corbyn isn't doing it vocally. They should be out there. Say, there was a lady I know from University of London Union. She was a student union leader, Claire Solomon. And we don't always agree on everything, but she posted and said, get on with it, call a demonstration. They've got 700,000, 800,000 people keen to be politically active, just joined up with an email list. Send them an email, all out to oppose digital ID. What more? That would overcome the problem, the stupidity of the last 2 weeks when Zara Sultana and Jeremy Corbyn are fighting a turf war about who controls a frigging email list. That's what they're fighting about. So they can launch a campaign, and they should launch this campaign immediately to mobilise the whole of what's called your party on the streets, and yes, to accept and welcome flag wavers and anyone else on the demonstrations. Everyone against the digital ID. All out against the digital ID. And if it needs be, workers' right, they're saying workers must prove. Workers must mobilise. The TUC, the trade unions, they should all mobilise as well. Non-implementation. Refuse to carry it out. Refuse to recognise it. Refuse to work for employers who demand it. Call a general strike against it if needs be. The French are calling strikes. Now, there's an issue here.
People are scanning their faces to go into work already.
Well, there is an area in London where we need to target first of all, and that's Hammersmith and Fulham. In Hammersmith and Fulham, they are rolling out generalised facial recognition across the borough, supposedly to control crime and all the rest of it. If there aren't enough cameras in Hammersmith and Fulham already, everywhere you walk in Hammersmith and Fulham, there's a camera up your backside. So if there aren't enough cameras there already to control crime, and they talk about crime's not rising, but if it was rising, why aren't the cameras we've already got being used? Why aren't they already being used? And by the way, I know there was about a year ago, there was a story, a year and a half ago, I remember about the year 2002, 2003, I ran an internet centre. And in that internet centre, I used to show people the latest discoveries on the World Wide Web. And there used to be, all around London, webcams from people. They used to have webcams that covered Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus, everywhere you went in London, there were webcams from people. There aren't any now. How comes that? How comes there are no webcams in London anymore? No webcam, no public webcam. You look around, look on the internet, find public webcam, Piccadilly Circus, public webcam, Trafalgar Square, public webcam, Parliament Square. They don't exist. They don't exist. They used to exist long before the speed of technology was there. They used to have every 10 seconds sometimes a picture from the area. Now you don't find any. And yet the police and the intelligence services and the government have got cameras everywhere watching over you, and they've got access to all the cameras everywhere. And so it's all about strengthening the power of the state vis-a-vis the people. That's the same reason why they orchestrated a conflict at the Tommy demonstration a couple of weeks ago, and it was orchestrated.
What was the conflict?
There were some battles took place. There was a counter demonstration. So there was Whitehall is like this, right?
He had his own.
Whitehall's like this. On this side, where Parliament is, the Tommy Robinson supporters were gathering. It was obvious it was going to be a big demonstration. It was obvious. Yes. Yet they only had half of Whitehall, and Tommy Robinson went along with it. Tommy Robinson, of course, is getting funding from Elon Musk, the second richest man in the world, and from a guy called Ben Habib, who left from Reform to split Reform, and he's a multi-millionaire property dealer, Pakistani by the way, who's financing Tommy Robinson and giving him his orders as to what he should do. Well, okay, half Pakistani, what he should do and what he shouldn't do. So Tommy was trying to be polite to get in with a polite company who's given him, the second richest man on earth is quite a handy guy to be feeding you a bit of cash. Quite a useful guy to be handing you a bit of cash. But at the other side, so there was Whitehall, that's the Tommy demo, going all the way down there, 300,000 people or something. And then there was an anti-Tomo demo here, which was like 6,000 people. with Zara Sultana making a speech, and loads of people with Palestinian flag. And then around the back here came another load of Tommy supporters, because there were so many of them, but it was obvious there'd be so many of them. So why were they put in the same street when only 2 months before, there was an anti-war demo that was banned from leaving Whitehall on the basis that we might go somewhere near a synagogue, right? So some people are manipulating the decision making. Exactly. They wanted a bit of a conflict, but they didn't want to arrest all the Tommy supporters. That was the one thing. They were quite mild. They did spray some with pepper. I was there. They sprayed some with pepper spray and stuff like that. There was a bit of ruction, but they wanted to test out Tommy Robinson. Then the next day, Tommy Robinson heard that there was violence against Sikhs, against Indians, and against people who've been here, like people who've been living here for decades. I saw him release a video where he said, "What the fuck's going on? Why are you attacking the foreigners? We ain't against foreigners, right? We're against the Muslims." Well, I mean, the point is, it's not normal. It's not normally on that angle. Put it that way.
There's a lot of
if there is collateral damage, normally he wouldn't be that bothered.
Yes.
But he's bothered because his financiers are trying to make him respectable wing of the street opposition to what could be a mass mobilization of the people developing from below, and the potential that is there. That's why I'm saying if the Your Party people took to the streets and the flag wavers took to the streets demanding no digital ID and had mass democratic debates about what should happen, rather than, they said free speech rally on Whitehall. It wasn't really a free speech rally. It was a Tommy rally. It was Elon Musk rally, and it was that whole section. It wasn't free speech. He didn't have someone like me invited, or someone like Piers Corbyn. So our angle from the anti-lockdown movement must be to welcome all the people to put their point of view. In Hyde Park, as we do here, you've got the Zionist over there, you've got the Muslim over there, you've got the Christian over there, you've got the Marxist over here, you've got the conspiracy theory over there, or the pro-Russian over there. We're all standing together to express our point of view and get those views out to mobilise the people against the tyranny being imposed by the ruling classes of the world against us in preparation for war, conflict, and yes, digital surveillance, technology, tyranny, slaughter, drones, all the rest of the technologies they can use, they will use against you and I. That's the whole game. That's what we saw. And the people who can lead this is those people who are leading the anti-lockdown movement. It is those people. They can lead it. Because going backwards, if you go backwards, over the last 5 years, they were the ones who were most militant. They were the ones who were most determined. And if they can draw in that connection to, yes, the English nationalists, and yes, the socialists, and yes, the trade unions, then you can have a movement like we're beginning to see in France.
So this is how
the French
Piers
movement
Corbyn is taking over the UK.
The French movement a couple of weeks ago began as a right-wing protest, and then the left joined in and overwhelmed it. Right? So I believe that type of scenario is perfectly possible in Britain today around the issue of digital ID. So go back to the mosque and tell them you don't want digital ID. Go to your church and tell them you don't want digital ID. It's the mark of the... Come out with whatever you like. It's the mark of the beast. Whatever you like. 1 second, my friend. Go to your football club and say, we don't want digital ID. Go to your community and say, we don't want digital ID. Mobilise, combine, organise, become aware of the tyrannical power of technology controlled by capitalism over society as a whole. And by that combination, you should also use technology as a mechanism for combining and organising. And I've noticed all of the groups now are using AI, from anti-lockdown people. You need to do it. If you want to knock out a poster that looks reasonable, you can go on there and say, I want this on it. I'm not happy with it. And you, well, I mean, look, Fiona Rose Diamond's doing it for a start, non-stop. Always what? What you say you can't? What you want to hand make a poster like a retard? like looking like an idiot, like with bad spelling. What's the point in that?
There's a bit of guide to Nicholas.
There's a lot coming
Some of those
in.
posters look like retarded posters, and I've said so to Piers myself.
Excuse me, a
I've
lot
said so
coming
open.
in.
You did
Yeah,
them.
we're all
You did them.
retards. We're all retards.
You don't have to have. I mean, if you can get if you can use a program, if you can use, you know, a Photoshop, or you can use PageMaker, you can use it. That still uses your brain. What do you think it is? If you use a video, right? You're making, doesn't mean you have to do it on a real film. Some people like that, but doesn't mean you have to do that. If you want to record and transmit something, you don't have to have a television station with old school film. You can use a YouTube channel. If you don't like the YouTube channel, you can use another channel. You can run your own channel. You don't have to go, oh, I'm anti-tech. You should. The only way you should be, what you should be anti-tech is this. You should learn to get off your mobile phone as much as possible. Spend an hour a day on the mobile phone and no more. And no more. And in that way, if you don't care, you know, when they go like, show me your paper, I don't have that.
We like scrolling.
Scroll all day, what? Scroll like that, is it? Amazing. What's the point? No, I do understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. But it's bad for your brain. It destroys your brain. Actually,
we need digital ID though.
Sorry?
We need this digital ID.
Why? We don't know who you are.
To stop fraud, to stop...
Stop what?
People having 5 bank accounts and stealing. And
How does that stop someone having 5 bank accounts?
Tax fraud.
At least it can track. It can track you.
Anything, sir.
Ask yourself this. Track you doing what?
We had digital ID in Ethiopia recently. In 2 years, 20 million people have been registered. And now we are 120 million. By the next 3-4 years, everybody will be.
And then?
What it found, if somebody before, if you have convicted in a court for crime, he changed an ID. He speaks with the prison authorities. They send him out. He take another ID. He used to live in this council. Next year he's in another council with a different name. He's a different person now.
What,
So
you don't? And that doesn't happen with digital ID, no.
But with digital
Right,
ID, it's
so every landlord goes like this.
Everybody have
Biometric, wait. Biometric. I got your biometric. I'm going to scan your face. I'm going to check it through the government. With every landlord, I don't think so. With every employer, you go work in a sandwich shop. Here's some leaflets. Give out some leaflets, will you? Give out some leaflets. Digital ID, like hell. It's a lot of nonsense. Utter and complete nonsense. Utter and complete nonsense.
14-year-olds working at ice cream just a Saturday from school. They got that
Slave labour. Well, it's just a lot of poppy.
You said, did you say 2 weeks ago that nobody said this?
Nobody said what?
There was going to be digital
Look, you've only just arrived. I've made my penance at the beginning of this meeting. I've said, Keir Starmer, well, accept the fact that Keir Starmer is desperately trying to promote 2 individuals, it seems to me. One is Boris Johnson and the other is Piers Corbyn. Well, if that's what they choose, Tony Blair's been given the job of being in command of Gaza. After all, the Gazans elected him instead of Hamas. Hamas are out, and the Gazans want Tony Blair. That's what we're told. That's what we're told. I've been speaking for a little while, as I said, mobilise against this nonsense and bring down this idiot Keir Starmer.
Finally
Done all
come
these things
round.
already.
Very glad. Well done. Very good. I'm glad you come round to the digital ID.
Well, not me come round. They come after us, haven't they? It's not me come round.
God, I must be brave.
Well, exactly. There you go. She's going against her. See? That's her.
I like that.
I must get the address of your tailor, Heiko. I like the style.
It's a nice jacket.
It really suits you.
And the hat as well.
But yeah, as my late speaker was saying, there's some great wise words from Heiko, and a bit about the Ukrainian war, a bit about digital IDs, and also the freedom movement. As Heiko was rightly saying there, the freedom movement was unique in that it brought people together from the left, from the right. It was a multi-dimensional, multi-political movement, and we had one common enemy, which I think is the World Economic WEF and the WHO. and we all recognise this. We put very funny. We put past differences aside, and I think that hasn't gone away. The World Economic Forum has not gone away. It's still in situ. We have a Prime Minister that is openly globalist and says that Davos is more important than Westminster, and he means it.
Place in the world.
And the freedom movement was just a wonderful example of how people can come together objectively to destroy tyranny. And in many ways, we were successful. We were right about the vaccine rollout. People are now dying in their droves. There are so many people claiming vaccine damage, mRNA damage, that they've had this. Orchestrated is setting up another department to cope with. So in many ways we won, we were proved right. None of us are dead. The Ukraine war, a friend of mine has just come back, he's been doing security in the Ukraine. Piles of bodies. You're looking at piles of women's bodies. Ukraine is effectively no longer a country. NATO and the Americans and British are given the military hardware. The problem they've got is there is no one to operate the military hardware at all. It is a sick joke. The Russians are moving in further and further. You've got a minute. If you look back to Germany, in 1944, they were calling them old granddads from the Reichstag. So right now, Ukraine is a similar situation. They're moving in. There's pregnant women there. There are granddads fighting in. The Ukraine is effectively finished. It's terrible. But when we talk about, as Heiko was talking about Boris Johnson, that monster, that animal, went to the Ukraine. And as a veteran myself, it never leaves you. 1982 guys were coming back at Southampton Dock from the Falklands War. I remember the screams, I remember the amputation. No one knows who those guys are today. That monster, that piece of filth, that obese piece of Boris Johnson went to the Ukraine to prolong war. Does it get any more evil than that? And that monster can sleep well at night, knowing this caused the death of probably 1.7 million Ukrainians. That's without the amputations, the PTSDs, the adjustment disorders that those poor people are going through. It hasn't gone away. Ukraine is effectively finished, but that hasn't stopped Johnson and the West. They're taunting, they're prodding the Russian bear, and they're hitting Russia with missiles. And Putin is, from what I know, showing incredible restraint by not hitting back at Britain and America. But they know what's in it. But at some point, the Russian people are going to have to say he's going to have to hit Britain, and he may take us by surprise at some point. You got 400,000 Russians in reserve, ready to join the front line if necessary. Britain, maximum active combat troops, I think you're looking at 30,000. They'll be shot out the air before they even reach the ground. It's a joke.
British Army?
The British Army. Well, this is not the Crimean War. I mean, the Crimean War, it was a little bit different. Lord Cardigan's forces, when they went up there, they had some... Britain was in enormous power. Next year is the anniversary of the Revolutionary War, which was really our Vietnam. But we lost more men in the American War of Independence than any other war. Thousands already. It's crazy. But on digital ID, I totally concur with what you're saying about the mobile phone. This is what's going to be used to bring in the digital ID. And talking about this obsessional, and even some psychiatrists now are recognising it as technology addiction disorder, where everywhere you go, you'll see them scrolling down their phones, scrolling here, scrolling there. Some people are getting blind because it's an unnatural light, so looking at it so often. Pregnant women, as soon as they've had the babies, what are they doing? They're scrolling down the mobile phone. It's destroying relationships, it's destroying human... I agree with what you're saying. If we can have the self-discipline of 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day, that'd be a good idea. It's not going to stop school children. Well, there's so much which is linked to the digital situation, but I think, and also if you're looking at digital ID and everything digital, you're also looking at more cyber fraud. I think it's a good idea to have as least online as possible, have a hard copy. But it's how are they going to roll out the digital ID? That remains to be done. But I think we can see comparisons here with the poll tax. We're all old enough to remember the poll tax riots. It didn't. Well, you're probably not. You're a baby here.
Yes, he is. Don't you believe that?
If you just refuse to carry the thing, how's going to work?
The poll tax riots, it was extremely unpopular. The police caused the riot in Trafalgar Square. There was mass non-compliance. And you've got to remember, yes, there is going to be pressure on us. Yes, there's going to be pressure pressure on the populace to comply. But the people that are trying to enforce it, those that are sending out the red letters and our emails, there's going to be a lot of pressure on them as well, particularly if you just ignore it. I mean, this is a scenario. Let me put this scenario to you today. They may send it in a letter. Dear Mr. So-and-so, would you please give me your details? So
exactly.
you have to sign up or you're going to be prosecuted. You know what? I didn't receive that letter. What letter you took about
7 letters
sent
the vaccine.
Oh, but
Right.
Mr. Smith, we sent it to you in the form of an email as well. But it's gone on to spam. I don't usually check spam, do we? So they're going to have problems rolling this out. The petitions has already surpassed 2 million. I think it's going to reach 3 million by the end of the week. This is enormous, guys. This is enormous. Yes, as you say, in China, they've got it. In Spain, they've got a digital ID which doubles as a passport. I believe.
What have we got to hide? Why
See,
don't people
that's
want
the
it?
old,
What have
that's
we
the
got
old
to hide,
argument.
though?
What
Come
have you
on.
got to hide? As Edward Snowden
you're
proved,
nearest to it.
as
You
Edward
do.
Snowden
What do you have to
proved,
hide? What have
you got to hide?
it's not about what you've got to hide. Snowden proved that the American government was spying on more Americans than Russia was, and he was given sanctuary in Russia, and he seems to be living there happily ever since. So it's not about nothing to hide. Your political views can be, if you get a government that doesn't like your political, everything is known about you. Sam, what you've got to realise is your
They know
digital
this
ID
anyway.
will be
They
linked
know
to
this
your
anyway.
bank account, it will be linked to your internet search history,
it all
and
really
eventually
easy to switch
to
off,
get the goodies that they're going to give you, you're going to have another vaccine, otherwise you don't get anything. So they're going to use, I would say right now, Keir Starmer in the Behavioural Insights
sign you're about
team
knowing,
is
so got
working
your information.
overtime to try and find out how they can best use applied behaviour, negative use of applied behavioural psychology to enforce compliance in everywhere, coercion, blackmail, fear. He's going to try and put a few
I think he
frightens
thinks
up.
he now has, I think he really thinks now that he just has to stand firm.
Yes.
Otherwise he's going to look like he's going to fall. So he's going to fall. That's what I think. I can't see any other way around it. He's going to
They're
fall.
going to keep pushing him, keep grinding him out. But
Like a
he's
typical
a
psychopath, antisocial personality disorder. He's very, very myopic. He seems to have blinkers on, completely oblivious to what's happening around him, totally deluded.
No idea whatsoever,
This is, and a lot of psychopaths are like this. They get off on it. So he's not going anywhere. But now it's turned out that he's got fraudulent by not declaring. I think it was some.
he's bloody fraud.
He's fraud. But so he's not. Although he was former head of the Director of Public Prosecutions, he's not a very good barrister, in my opinion. He wouldn't have told you Davos is more important than Westminster if he was a good barrister. So I think he admitted more there than he actually believed. And anyone's thoughts on digital? Anyone think it's a good idea? Digital
Only our friend over here.
Well, you have it. You have it, then we're not.
Got all your information anyway.
So those Ethiopians who come to England on a boat, do we have the data from Ethiopia?
Do you think somebody's got a nice freezer?
It's lost, is
That's
it?
not a good reason. That's not. Digital ID doesn't help immigrants from coming in. It doesn't stop them.
That's what they said he's here for.
Yeah, that's what
That's
they-
the only
okay,
reason.
What they
That's the only
say
reason.
is wrong,
That's the only reason.
but there are good things about digital ID.
Like so what? Like what? Like what?
Like just fraud, identity fraud. You can't change your
Starmer
identity.
is.
Because it's connected
You've all heard
with
what's
your-
happening in Epping at the Bell Hotel. Starmer is exploiting the immigrant situation. It's almost become a cliche with this man. He's exploiting the Bell Hotel to bring this in. He's playing his ace card, and you know what? The British people are aware of what he's doing, and it's not going to work. A lot of British people actually feel quite insulted that they're put in the same ranks as immigrants, illegal immigrants. They're quite insulted by that.
Well,
to
I
be
mean,
quite
it's
honest.
madness.
British
You got people who are
people,
declared
they hate
illegal immigrants
immigrants.
with no papers,
Yeah.
who they know nothing about, and then they're saying because of that, everyone we do know something about has to have a record.
As a
It's fucking
it's
madness.
just totally absurd.
lunacy.
It is insane.
Stop them
But
working.
it's not about convenience as we know it. Everyone in the freedom movement knows it's about control. They want total control. Orwell, when he wrote 1984 Animal Farm, they weren't just stories, they were predictions, they were manuals about what could happen in the future. That man had incredible foresight. George Orwell. Now we are living in the nightmare, the dystopian nightmare. You will comply at your peril, or you can resist. And in my opinion, it's going to be easier to resist time than before because people were hardened. We know what the globalists are capable of. They released it like a military strike, the vaccine rollout. using blackmail, coercion, losing your jobs. We saw the way that the NHS, they had no jab, no job. We saw this. Eventually, they rescinded after
That's right.
2
That's
million
right. That's
people
right.
came
That's
to
right.
trial.
That's right. That's
So
right.
there are more of them than us. There's only 100,000 police. Now, what
Well, that's the them.
nationwide, and believe me, the police get scared. The police do get scared. And some of the conversations I've heard here when the head of police have been addressing the TSG, which were a bunch of criminal thugs.
So again?
The police do get scared because there are more of them than us. So
More of us than them.
More us than
You're
them,
mixing
I
it
should
around.
say.
Agent of the police.
I know.
All coming out.
It's
All
a rainy
secret
day,
coming
isn't it?
out
I mean,
now.
I must be fucking-
All the information on your digital ID,
I've got to wind
most
up.
people have got it in their pocket already.
Well, thank you. So, but yeah, civil liberties is primary. Next year will be 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. The Americans got it right. They protected free speech by what? And by the way, I think
Not
Trump
much,
is
though, by the look of it.
making George Galloway's banned from the United States. Where's Bill?
They
Trump
just
does not
declared
understand. Trump
the
doesn't understand
Antifa
the
to be
First Amendment.
terrorists.
Trump does
Yeah.
not understand the First Amendment. Free speech protected by law. You say what you want to whom you want when you want. Free speech should be absolute. Thank you. Have a nice week.
Thank you very much, Adam.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, very good.
That's us for today.
It was okay, though.
I've got a buzz today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the show.
He said he wanted me to go to Liverpool as some sort of bodyguard.
What?
Your bodyguard.
That's what he said. Pierce
The
said-
bodyguard.
He said,
Okay, all right. See you later, yeah.
Was it coherent?